I've just went out for about a month straight to learn as many things about socializing as possible. And something that uniquely came across to me as the number one thing that helps people become more social, which is alcohol, actually had a reverse impact on me. I remember the first night I went out when I got back to Hong Kong at the start of this holiday. And I went to this concert. I was with all my friends. I was having an amazing time. And the next day I was in an even better mood. I was feeling great. And then at night I drank and I felt even better. It was so easy to be social. And then on Sunday, it was a little bit more difficult to be social. And then every night out, I progressively got less and less social. Because what I realized is every time you drink, you don't actually improve your social skills, you just have a good time, which is fair. It's fine, you know? And it might be something that some people use as like a crutch, but the problem is when you need drinks to be social, then all of a sudden you never learn how to do it properly and you completely rely on drinks. And that's an experiment that I tested out about a week ago. Before I get into that, I'm Finn and I help young guys make really good friends. If you are interested in my like step-by-step guide, I have a link in the description where I have my course. But something that I was thinking about, because my social skills went down, it was harder to talk to people, I had a lower like vibrational energy, I just wasn't like funny, I wasn't having a good time with my friends as much. This was when I was drinking like so much and I wasn't taking big breaks in between. I was like falling back in those bad habits, like watching Netflix late at night instead of just going to sleep, instead of like training as often. So I took a break. I said, all right, like I'm not gonna drink I'm not gonna drink for like, I know it was only a short period, it was 4 days where I didn't drink, but like I skipped a night out and then a house party I went to, but I didn't drink that night. And then the next night I only drank late. So like, even though it was a small difference, my mood changed so quickly. The two things I made sure to do was I kept trying to get like a lot of sleep even when I was drinking. And I also didn't drink as much, or like I drank like a decent bit, but in like shorter periods of time. The next day when I woke up, I wouldn't like start drinking again, because that's what I would do before. When I would go on a night out, I'd be like kind of hungover, so I'd have another drink. But that just continues like how long you're gonna feel bad for. So in this experiment, I actually learned something really interesting. It's almost like you're building your social skills every time you go out sober. But every time you drink, you're kind of like, you're stagnating. And something that I've learned about social skills over a long period of time, if you're like naturally not very social, it kind of like lowers unless you're used to being around friends. Like if you're by yourself for 3 weeks, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult to speak to a bunch of random people, especially if you're not naturally social, than if you were going out every day and hanging out with your friends, even if you're not drinking. And so what ended up happening is I went to this house party. It took me like a few hours to kind of like warm into things. But since my social skills were good, like naturally quite good since I've been building them for years, and then it was all right, like I could still hold conversations, but I had this very mellow vibe. And what I learned is, since my friends and I are so like loud and like funny, it's almost like a fine line that we're playing. So every time we go out and we drink, since we already push the line so much with our goofiness, our humor, our high energy, like we're loud, when we go out and we also drink, then we go way past the line and we turn into those drunk dickheads. In a sense, you know, not necessarily, but we also something I've noticed is when I drink, I also have like a little bit lower energy. And that brings me on to my next point. But what I wanted to say is, when you go out, it's not even negative to go out when you're sober. You just need to it takes a little longer to get warm. You need to some times, you need to practice it for a while before it becomes natural again. But when you unlock that, it's like you're the most social dude ever. And I'm not saying never drink, because I will drink if I go to a club like 90% of the time. But like at a house party, talking to people, you don't need drinks. It doesn't make a fucking difference. And that brings me to my next point. Energy is more important than alcohol. So you can drink all the coffee in the world, you can have all the nicotine, you can have as much alcohol as you want, but none of that is ever going to get you to the level of energy that a super happy, super healthy athlete gets to when they go out, like they've been sleeping well, and they go out and they're full of energy, and every time they see someone, they're like, hey, how you going? I remember at the start of this month, at the start of December when I went out, it was like 5 a.m. and I remember going up to these two people with my friend, and the two girls, never met them before. I was like, hey, gassing myself up. And having loads of fun. And like literally anywhere I went, I could have a great conversation with somebody. People were super receptive. But it was the same person, but I was in a different energy and on a different night out. I couldn't speak to anybody. Like nobody was giving me positive like feedback. And you might think, oh, it was just a bad night, or that night you didn't have friends out. I was thinking about this. But that's bullshit because I've gone on nights out where I don't know anybody, but I've just met a ton of people. It's super late, but I've just gone and spoken to new people, made new friends. But I've also done that exact same thing when I'm in low energy, and it had two different like realities. That's when I made the other video on my channel, how your mind is like you reflect what your thoughts are, like who you believe you are in your mind outwards into your real life. It's a true thing. And it may not be in like an autistic, oh, I think that I'm going to be successful, and you are. It might just be in a way where you're very high energy, you're really healthy. And so when you like people, you like being around people, and you've cleared your insecurities and your traumas or whatever, and you go out and you're so full of energy. You're so happy to talk to everybody. That is so much more valuable than, just downing yourself in alcohol. This guy, I know him, he said, when I use alcohol, yeah, it's way easier to talk to people. But he was still nowhere near as social as me because my social skills trumps how much alcohol anybody could have. No amount of alcohol will even get you to my level of like low inhibition when I'm warmed up, when I'm with my good friends. And that brings me to my next point. It's not about when you go out and you drink and you're more social, you've been out with your friends, you pre-gamed. How do you know you wouldn't have been more social if you didn't drink, but you were with those same friends, you're having a great time laughing, and over a few hours you just became more social anyways because you've just been with the boys all day, like you're in a more social mood. It wasn't the alcohol that caused it. It's like in science, you can't test for the dependent variable, the outcome, if you have more than one variable that is affecting it. That's why there's something called extraneous variables in science where you have to limit that. That was a bit of school knowledge from back in the day. Nah, but the point that I'm making here is I went out fully sober. I met so many people. I was like doing stupid shit, laughing with my friends. But when I would do it, I would be so much more composed and I would end up getting to more positive outcomes. When I say that, I mean like people like saying, oh, it's so good to see you. Like this girl came up to me really rude, but she folded in like 2 hours and I made her like apologize for coming up to me and being really rude. And I ended up hanging out with her for a bit. And that only would have happened when I was sober and clear enough to think. And because when you drink, you don't need to overthink when you're being social. You shouldn't be thinking. But like the back of your mind will naturally be processing information. When you drink, you're just slowing that down. When really that's something that you can cook with. Just spend time improving your social skills. Have a mentor, because if you don't really know how to do it and you don't understand the process, it might take a super long time. Yeah, and shameless plug, like that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you, show you the guide. But just keep going, bro, and I promise you, your life will improve. Thank you for watching this video.